Dr. Justin Frank, the professor of psychiatry at George Washington University Medical School, tells us what happens when a sadist walks into a pandemic. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is our old buddy, Dr. Justin Frank, MD. He is the psychoanalyst and clinical professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at George Washington University. He's the author of Trump on the Couch. His previous books include Obama and Bush on the Couch. Two separate books, Obama on the Couch, Bush on the Couch. And his Twitter handle is Justin Frank MD, spelled just like it sounds. And Dr. Frank, welcome back to the program. Tell me about sadism, if we could speak generally about it first, and then I want to get into your thoughts on this. Go ahead.
Okay, well, sadism is a concept that was based on Marquis de Sade originally, but it's a concept that involves taking pleasure in inflicting cruelty to someone else. And it has, it originally was a sexual pleasure, erotic pleasure, at inflicting cruelty on a masochist, on somebody who enjoys feeling pain. I don't think the American people enjoy feeling the pain that Trump is inflicting upon us, however. But that's the original concept. But sadism really has to do with an innate, deep need to be cruel and destructive, and the pleasure at doing it. And Donald Trump is a great example of that.
My recollection from, being in school years ago was that one element of sadism was control, that a sadist is not only deriving pleasure from causing pain to other people, but that a component of that pleasure was the feeling of, now I'm back in control. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are really got a great memory, yes. That's exactly correct. And it's true that it's about having control and being in control and being the most powerful person in a relationship and dominating it.
Right. So what does this tell us?
It's a reversal of the way a child feels when they feel hopelessly dependent on their mothers. So they end up becoming, have this great need to dominate and control.
So how does this inform us about the way that Donald Trump and other members of the Trump administration, who have been not just willing, but in some cases enthusiastic collaborators, about the way that they've approached the COVID crisis, where we've got now almost 250,000 dead Americans as a consequence of the way that they responded?
Well, he does two kinds of sadism that I just wrote in this little article, which was cleverly titled Sadist Walks into a Pandemic. And I think that it's unfortunately not a joke, because he is the sadist, and he had a lot to do with the pandemic. The way a sadist and his enablers do is they do something called malignant neglect. They ignore it, but they ignore it knowing how bad and how dangerous it's going to be. So they let the virus inflict its damage and destructiveness. And then they say, oh, I had nothing to do with it, I couldn't do it. So part of the sadism here is the evasion of responsibility. But the worst part for me has been the teasing part. Trump is a sadist who teases people. I think the vaccine, for instance, is a tease. It's not that different from Trump University or from Trump steaks or from promising people things. I actually think his presidency is a form of a tease, and the more I talk with you, the clearer I become that it really is about teasing the American people about the things he's going to do. He's never done one of the things that he's promised to do other than sack the courts and give some tax breaks, but that's about it. But the rest is a tease about infrastructure, about helping people, about helping people of color. All of these things are teases, and that's what a sadist learns how to do. They get the other person to need them, and that is a way they can affect their power and inflict their power. And I know that the election is tomorrow, so you've been concerned about his efforts to steal the election. But one of the ways of stealing an election like this for him is to find a way to make it seem legitimate so people don't know that he's been stealing it. And that's pretty hard to do now because people are on to him. But basically, by declaring a victory, say, tonight or doing something else, he's going to try to make it seem legitimate when actually there's a tremendous effort to suppress votes, to not count votes, to throw away ballots, to scare people away. Lots of different efforts that he's making, and lately some violent intimidation, it seems like, that's really quite disturbing. All of those are in the service of sustaining power, but they have a cruel element to
What
them.
is the impact on people in the micro sense, for example, Trump's children? In the somewhat larger micro sense, the people around him, like Cohen, Michael Cohen, who was with him for 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then in the larger sense, on the American people and the world, frankly. I mean, he's been inflicting his. If you're clearly saying that you believe that Donald Trump is a sadist, he's been inflicting his sadism on our Democratic allies all around the world while embracing, his, I would say, fellow sadists among the authoritarians around the world.
Yes.
What kind of impact does that have on people and institutions around time?
Well, I think that there's no general one impact that it can have on people and institutions. I think there are certain basic categories of impact that his sadism has. On people who are his supporters, they end up rallying behind him, and part of that rallying is based on fear that his sadistic attacks will turn on them. So they're going to be on the right side of his sadism, standing behind him and supporting him. So they are afraid of him. And there are a lot of people like that, including a lot of people who are intimidated as voters. But there's a lot of other people who try to stand up to it. And the effect that has is it can strengthen people if they're not afraid of him and if they can see him for who he is. And I think that's something that is happening. It started really with the BLM movement after that murder in Minnesota. I really think that people have started to stand up to him and confront him. The Lincoln Project has confronted him. Those are Republicans who really believe in the Republican policies, but they just cannot stand the fact that Donald Trump is the representative of America, that he's destructive and he's breaking down institutions. So I think that the problem that is going to happen to the rest of the world is they won't know how to trust us. I assume they will trust Joe Biden if he wins, but it's not going to be natural. He knows a lot of people, but I think trust for this country is going to be hard won because he's my president, Donald Trump. We elected him. I mean, it's very hard for people to trust. People want to know what's wrong with America, what's happened. And we are really under the sway of a kind of a cult leader that has a sadistic quality. Jim Jones was the ultimate sadist in his when he killed all of his followers, got them to drink the Kool-Aid. It's a sadistic act that invites mass suicide. And it's really an assertion of power on Jim Jones's part, and for Trump, it's the same thing. I think Trump's children, you asked that earlier, I'm sorry I got off that, They are afraid of him. And they support him no matter what, the way the child of an abused child of a parent supports the abuser out of fear.
Yeah, and Donnie with his frenetic, we just have
oh my God,
to break. Donnie with his frenetic videos looks like a little kid who's frightened.
He looks terrified, and I think they all are frightened. Some are better able to hide it than others.
Yeah, they're also afraid of going to jail.
Well, that's another thing entirely.
I would love on another occasion, I'm sorry, I can't control these breaks, but when I'm doing the show remote, it just happens when it happens at 15 minutes after the hour. But I would love to get into a conversation with you about authoritarianism and sadism and the association. Dr. Justin Frank.